This December, I'm making a Christmas calendar using vanilla JavaScript and HTML canvas. In each one of these days, I'm gonna procedurally generate a unique Christmassy item because I need icons like these around this time, and good free ones are hard to come by. I also want to easily scale and color them in different ways. I hope you'll follow along and implement your own versions so I can showcase them in a special video on the 24th. You'll practice working with coordinates, basic math, and various JavaScript programming techniques. It's a good project, I think, to learn about code modularity, reusability, and how to write consistent code. Oh, and I'll be coding without glasses, apparently, because making one video a day is not enough of a challenge. Now, let's set up the project from scratch and learn how to draw a star.
Coding with Radu. Let's code now.
I'm gonna be coding in Visual Studio Code, and in an empty folder, let's create our first file, index.html. Now we begin with basic HTML syntax, first the doc type, then the HTML opening and closing tags, and then the head. Let's close the head and give the page a title. December 2024, like so. Now, if you save this file and open it in a browser, I'm using Google Chrome. It's empty as we expect, but here at the top it does show the title of the document, so we're good to go. Now, in the body, we are going to generate that kind of calendar grid, but I'm not going to add all the elements one by one in HTML. Instead, we're going to be using JavaScript. So let me open here a script tag, and let's close it as well. And in it, I want to generate a grid with a given cell size. Let's say 200 pixels. And now we can loop through all the days, starting at day 1 and all the way to day 24. We increase and we generate a new canvas element for each day, like so. We're going to be drawing a different item on each one of these canvases, eventually. Now let's set the width to the cell size and the height to the cell size, and add these canvases to the document body, like so. Otherwise, we won't see anything. Now, if you save and refresh the page, you actually still don't see anything. But if you open the developer tools inside of this elements section, you will see that these canvases are there. They are just transparent. So let's give them a little bit of a style to distinguish them. I'm going to go up here in the head section, and in the style, I will give the canvas element. Let's start with the background color. I'm going to use a light gray, like so. I'm missing some margins here. I'm going to add, let's say, a 3 pixel margin, like so. And let's round the corners a little bit to make it look nicer. Right. And we don't need these developer tools anymore. We can see the canvases, but of course, we should always keep them open on the console tab so that we can tell if there are any errors on the page. Always keep the console open when coding. Now let's fill these cells with something. I'm going to add here a function called fill cell for the day and the given canvas. And I'm going to implement this function down here, given an index and the canvas element. Let's first get the reference to the 2D drawing context of the canvas, like this. And I'm going to draw everything in the center of the cell. So let's get an XY coordinate of it, like so. Half the canvas width and half the canvas height. I also want the items to have a specific size, and I could make them the width of the canvas, for example, but let's scale this down maybe to 60% so that there is some margin around the items as well. And for now, I'm going to draw a number in each of these cells as a placeholder, passing these parameters, and let's implement this function down here. So given a context and a value at x and y, let's just call the last one size, and I'm going to call fill text with the value at the xy location. Save, refresh, and there are the numbers. Quite small. Let's make them bigger and actually use this size parameter. So I'm going to set the font to size, pixels, and then let's use a monospace font like this. Okay, better, I can read them. Some of them, these are out of screen. So the bottom left corner is now the XY. I want the text to align properly. And we'll do that horizontally using text align like this. And vertically using text baseline to middle. And now we have something to work with. Let's begin to draw the first item, a star. Now, the way we're going to structure this is here at the top, I will have an array of functions to draw different items. It's going to be an empty array for now, but I will already populate the first element with this draw star method that we have to implement. Now, this function is going to be written in its own file, but here I want to keep references to them so that the index here matches the day where we want to draw the item. Make sense? Now, assuming that this is already implemented, we can go here inside of the fill cell function and try to get the draw item function from the draw item functions at this specific index. And if we succeed, if this is defined, then we are going to call that function with these same parameters. Otherwise, we draw the number as before. And at the moment, this is not going to work because this draw star is not defined, but we will do it in its own file, like so. I'm going to include here a file inside of the items folder, star.js, and let's close this script tag. In VS Code, if you're going to control-click this, it's going to create for you the items folder and the first JavaScript file inside it, like so. And our draw star function, given a context x, y, and the size, let's just draw a bounding box for it at the moment. So I'm going to get these top and left helper variables, and then I'm going to stroke a rectangle using these values like so. A square, basically. And there it is. We're ready to draw the star now. And I won't insist on it too much because I already drew stars in other projects, like in that augmented reality Dragon Ball video. But I'm going to define the radius as half this size, and let's hard code here point count to 5. You could use a parameter for this, but it's so common to draw 5-pointed stars that we're going to go with that. And the way that we begin to do it is by drawing a circle using polar coordinates. The circle is going to be not very round because it only has 5 points. So essentially it becomes a regular pentagon. Let's see. We begin the path and we loop from 0 to point count, like so. And we need to calculate the angle. Now, this angle is going to be I divided by point count. This gives us a percent value, basically, from 0 to 1, which we can use to scale to pi, which is the full number of radians in a circle. And with this angle, we can move from the center of the circle towards the surface by calculating the surface x coordinate relative to x, using the cosine of the angle and multiplying this by the radius, because the cosine is between -1 and 1, so we won't really see anything unless we scale it as well. And the same thing for y using the sine. If you're not comfortable with polar coordinates, I do have a video on the topic, so do check that out. And now we can line to surface x, surface y, and let's fill. Now if you save and refresh, you get this regular pentagon here. And the trick to make it look like a star is to double the number of points, but use this one here as an outer radius and add another inner radius somewhere here. So then this point is going to go here and then back up here and then back in here, up here, in here, and so on. So let's begin by typing here 10 points and renaming this to outer radius and then inner radius. I'm going to set it to half the outer radius. And then here, after we have the angle, we still need the radius. And I'm going to decide based on this parity of I. So for even numbers of I, we'll use the outer radius and otherwise the inner radius. Now if you save and refresh, it looks like a star. I kind of want it to align vertically like this, like to be symmetric according to this axis here. And we can do that in many ways. Like now it's symmetric according to this one here. So if we flip here, sine and cosine, we are going to get it symmetric to the vertical one, like this. And if you want this to point upwards, you could, for example, use a minus here instead. Now let's add colors here as well. And I think that I want to pass the color as a parameter to the items here. So maybe we go back to index.html and let's generate a random color here. I'll just randomize the hue between 0 and 360, so it can be any color really. And I'll just pass this hue here like so, because then the objects can use different shades of the same color somehow. We'll see eventually. Now I'm going to pass it here like this, and let's set this to fill style using this HSL syntax. And now I use the hue with the maximum saturation and 50% lightness. Save, refresh, and this is what we get. Every time we refresh the page, the star will show in a different color. Now this star doesn't touch all these corners of the bounding box. You can see the gap is here. That's kind of bothering me a bit, but I prefer it like this. Otherwise, scaling it vertically will not make it a regular polygon anymore. So yeah, it's gonna be like this. Also, the center of the star is here in the middle of the bounding box. So if you would rotate it, spin it around, then animating it would be as expected in this way. We don't need this bounding box anymore, but maybe you do if you still want to play with this object. So I'm commenting it out here. And looks like left and top are not useful anymore, so I'm going to comment them out as well.